Everyone, this is the presentation on web APIs built with Racket. My name is Aki Iskandar, and I'm a Racket noob. I mean brand new, less than 2 days, maybe 3 by now, including reading a book. So actual code, I don't know, maybe a day. Anyway, let's continue. So here's how to contact me. I won't read all this stuff. You can rewatch the video if you want to, if you'd like to, and there's my contact information. I am sharing the code for this presentation, and I'm going to keep on adding to the code in a public repo on GitHub, and the link is there. Okay, so what was I trying to do? Well, I was trying to find a fun programming language to adopt as my new language, basically. I've been using Python for about 20 years, and it's not that it's getting old. I love Python, but I've always wanted to try Lisp. And when I was researching on how to get started on Lisp, everybody says to go to Common Lisp. So because Scheme was for university students and it was highly theoretical, at least this is what I read. So every time I looked at, what's involved in getting into Lisp, everyone was saying you got to start with Common Lisp. So I bought Peter Siebel's book, Practical Common Lisp, and I couldn't get past chapter 2. So anyway, my bread and butter is web development. So using Common Lisp, I tried it for a little bit, and I just wanted to kind of see how to get started with web development, and I couldn't find a good web server, or at least something that I knew how to use easily or learn easily. Also an IDE, I couldn't find anything other than Emacs, and that also has a steep learning curve. So given my limited time, I just could not start any project in terms of learning Common Lisp, and I didn't have any customer projects where I can try. So all this would have been on my time, and as a self-employed person, that's something I don't have any of extra time. So then, okay, Common Lisp is out. So how about Clojure? Well, I've seen a lot of videos, and I've read so many good things about Clojure. And Rich Hickey, the inventor of Clojure, I've seen a lot of his YouTube things, and he's a hell of a smart guy, and it was very alluring, so I tried it. But it's tied to Java, and that has pros and cons, and not to make it a Clojure talk, because it's not a Clojure talk. But basically, Clojure wasn't working for me, and I had the same problem. I didn't really have a project I can use Clojure with. I didn't just want to write Hello World programs. I wanted to build something, a real project. So Racket and circumstances saved the day. So I really wanted to learn Lisp for all the reasons we hear about. Macros, the beauty of macros, and a lot of other reasons. Too many to mention here. But in my search, I stumbled across Racket, and I loved it for. The REPL was very fast. There was no compilation step. At least it didn't take as long as what Clojure does. I'm not sure if it's interpreted or compiled. I think it's compiled, but it happens very, very quickly. The IDE, Dr. Racket, there's no learning curve at all to use it. You just type and hit play or run, and you're off and running. Also, there was a book that I bought, Realm of Racket, and it's a fun read so far. I'm only on page 50 or 60, and so far so good. And then I saw a great ebook on web development. It's actually written by Jesse. So I bought that ebook, and Jesse, I've not read it yet, but I will, I promise. So there seems to be a lot of good resources. The official website has solid documentation, but the thing that impressed me the most was that it seems like everything I want to do, it has libraries for pretty much built in, just like Python and maybe even more. So, and then the circumstances that made everything possible in terms of learning Lisp for real, and the chosen Lisp is Racket, is because I found a project that I can do, and I didn't have to report to anybody in terms of or use the technologies they were already using. I can use whatever I bloody felt like using. So it feels great to be able to do that. So this is only a 10-minute talk, so I'm going to go a lot faster. So. Okay, great. So I've got a project. I got a programming language, Racket. Where do I start? So typically when I learn something new, like a new language, there's a bunch of things that I need to be able to do as a web developer, and this is the list. Things like writing and reading cookies, parsing JSON, returning JSON, merging templates, etc. As a side note, if anyone can help in how to maybe mimic PHP's include file functionality, I'd love to hear from you. only because I haven't gotten to that part yet, and I'm not sure how to do it. But that is something that's very important to my project, and I have not seen an easy way to do it yet. Mind you, I've only spent less than 2 days researching and trying all this stuff out so far. But so far, I love it. I can do everything else that's on this list. Okay, so the project, it's a photo carousel for motivation. The back-end APIs are in Racket. The front is in Vue. So I'm not using Racket server-side code to produce HTML, just basically JSON. And then everything's going to be, in Vue.js. I might use React, but I know Vue better than React. So I'm going to go in Vue first. And everything is hosted in the cloud on Linode. Couldn't find a decent host that had Racket availability. So Linode, you just have the bare bones server and you install everything yourself. So in this presentation, we'll look at one API. Okay, so you start with a database, right? Especially if you're going to be reading and writing and persisting data rather than just manipulating numbers in memory. So I've got here, just showing really quickly, just a table. It's a members table with 2 members in it, myself and my wife, Aki and Kim, first names in the table. Then I wrote a store procedure that will return JSON rather than have the language or the server-side language. And I do this not only because it's Racket and I don't know how to manipulate JSON yet in Racket, but even though I know how to do it in Python, let's say, I still have the database return JSON and have the API layer as a pass-through, and it just works well that way. It's probably faster, and there's less code to write, and if you're decent at PL/SQL or whatever database technology you're using, if you're good at writing store procedures, it just speeds development up, I find. And then it's portable. You can just swap out the server-side layer if you wanted to. So there's the store procedure. I'm just returning a JSON. And then, okay, so are you ever going to show us some Racket code? Well, to that, hell yeah. Let's look at some code in Racket now, finally. So we'll look at one API because it's a short presentation. So just some comments at the top. So there's all the things that I brought in, the web server templates, the URL structs. I'm not sure what half of these things are, to be honest with you. It was just trial and error, but it seems to, in less than 2 days, I was able to be pretty productive in this language, so I just love it. I mean, Racket just makes sense to my brain. And then here's the, I love this part. 3 lines of code, basically, 25 to 28 or 4 lines of code to connect to the database and return a connection. I mean, that is just amazingly efficient. And then also efficient, I find the dispatcher to have your routes for the application. That is pretty simple too. I mean, everything just makes sense. It's just so well laid out. I love this language. And then here's the rest of it. So on line 52, this is a simple method that just returns a template, and it's the sample.html template, and I just wanted to see if I can return it, and I can. Again, if anyone knows how to merge templates, like PHP's include functionality, please let me know. Also then on line 61, that's the API that I'd like to show you. So it's really just getting a list of members, and you can see that, so I get the connection, and then the query value, I pass in the connection to Postgres, which was defined up here on line 26. And then I go ahead and execute, I call the store procedure by just saying select get members as JSON string, and that was the store procedure that we saw before. And then, of course, for Racket to serve anything, you got to tell it to, hey, start your web server. I started on port 8080, then that's basically it for the code. And when you run it, and if you go to over here on localhost 8080/members, as the route said, it goes to the members function, and it hits the database and returns the JSON. And here's the people that you saw in the database, Aki and Kim. Okay, next slide. That's it. So where am I so far? Just wanted to say thank you to everybody, and not only you guys, but everyone in the Racket community. It's just such a great language. Great platform, batteries included. I just love it. In less than 2 days, I've just been fairly, not proficient, not at all proficient, but productive. I've been able to be pretty productive in tackling that huge list that I showed you of what I need to be able to do for web development. And with Racket, it's just amazing. So I stood up a VM on Linode, installed Racket and Apache, configured it to be a reverse proxy server. I have Racket running on port 8080. Of course, Apache's on port 80, and then everything works. And it's lightning fast. I'm just very impressed with the speed. And that's it. That's the end of the presentation. Thanks for listening.